Welcome back to another episode of the Goonery, episode 101. And what do you know? We are here to talk about another Bears loss in week 5. This one, Brandon, I'm sure you would agree with me. That first half was miserable. No other way to describe it. I mean, there was one point Kirk Cousins had completed 17 passes in a row. And the Bears were down 21-3 at one point. Only ended up losing 29-22. So that second half, we saw some of those strides we've been looking for.
Legitimately, I thought there was going to be a point where Justin Jefferson was going to have more completions than Justin Fields. That's how bad the game was trending at that point. But so I'm going to go from two standpoints, the positive and the negative. And I'm going to start off with the positive. The positive was that Justin Fields looked like an actual NFL quarterback. And that's not a shot at him. It's the fact that, the pieces that was around him actually performed. And he actually was given a clean pocket so where he can make the throws that we know he can make. And it was exciting for me to see because me and you agreed upon something before the season started. This season isn't about making the playoffs. This season isn't about contending. It's about seeing where Justin Fields is going to head in terms of his progression. And one thing that we did discuss last week is that there was a clear regression that's going on, which some of it had to do with him, but a lot of it didn't have to do with him. And the fact that he's making ends meet with little around him is very, very, very encouraging. And I will say this. You cannot convince me on that last drive that Amir Smith-Marset got ripped from behind for a fumble that we were not going to score on that drive. I truly, truly believe that we probably would have scored. We probably would have went for two, because it's been a weird trend around the league recently where there's a lot of teams going for two because the analytic nerds are saying that they should go for two. But I think we would have scored on that drive. And the fact that we had that type of confidence going into that last drive, it says a lot. And it says a lot about who is our quarterback and how is he going to progress throughout the season. I think even for a loss like that, it's not a matter of, y'all lost, I did it. Sometimes you could probably think about that. But I do feel like there was a confidence that was built from that loss, regardless of how heart-wrenching it was, because the Bears were going to be in Viking territory had Smith-Marset got out of bounds. So, it's a lesson learned. I'm not going to slam Marset because so much stuff has been said already. I don't need to say anything more. Now, let me go to the negative part of this. Now, I've noticed a really sickening trend in the first half of games for the Bears. And I'm not talking offensively. Offensively, we know what it is. Defensively, it seems as though there is a lack of preparation for the first half of games. It is always this team playing in the second half and doing what they're supposed to do in the second half. There is no reason why Justin Jefferson had double-digit catches and 100-plus yards in the first half. I'm sorry. That's
first quarter alone.
In the first quarter alone, you would think like, oh my God, he's going to break the receiving record for the day. Now, I don't know what the preparation plan is. I'm not sure what is the issue here. But and by the way, Alan Williams did point out that we need to be a four-quarter team. Good. I'm glad you mentioned that because every first half this season has not looked good. And the only exception you can make is against the Texans and maybe the 49ers. But other than that, the first half defenses look terrible. It seems like even mid-game for the first half, you can't make adjustments. That is an issue. So one thing that I would like to see is this defense play 4 quarters of football, and considering that they play 2 quarters of football, why can't they play 4 quarters of good football where they are actually covering their assignments and not leaving guys open on every short yardage situation? It's frustrating to watch. So that's one of the main things I'm going to be looking for when they play the Commanders, because Carson Wentz is prone to making mistakes. I know he's in the top 5 for passing yards at this moment in time, but he can be had.
And that's what happens when you're playing from behind as much as have been as well.
Good point.
But just to touch on a few of your points regarding the defense coming out and playing 4 quarters instead of 2. The talent's just not there. if we're being honest,
Yeah.
at all three levels. I mean, it's just not there, and you saw it with the defensive backs. They were just exploited in that first half, and there's absolutely no other way to go about that. I mean, no other way to describe it. It was ugly. I mean, there was no situation where any NFL quarterback, let alone Kirk Cousins, should be completing 17 passes in a row to start a game.
Mhm.
And but regardless, I wanted to go back to Justin Fields because personally, this is by far, in my opinion, by far and away the best he's looked all year, and
Not even close.
probably last year, if we're being honest, too, if you include last year. And I know you made a little jab at the analytical the go for two, but I just want to point out a couple analytical stats. Jacob Infante, not sure if you follow him. No,
Yeah, he great follow.
a great follow, but he in his article taken away from week 5, Justin Fields was an above average quarterback this year for the first time in the analytical stats. 11th in points earned per play, 13th in points above average per play, and 13th in expected points or what is it? EPA, expected points average, is it, or added, expected points added per play. So he was above average in all three of those, but he led the league in both expected points earned and points above average per run out of any position this week. He was the most efficient rusher in the NFL analytically this past week. I know your quarterback should not be what you're dependent on with your legs. But when David Montgomery comes out and runs for 20 yards on 12 touches or whatever it is, it was nice to see Fields have a good day through the air and on the ground.
Yeah.
And those passing numbers, honestly, probably would have been a lot higher. Dante Pettis hadn't dropped a few passes. And Justin Fields will never say it, but he is always this year going to be hindered by the weapons that are around him.
Yeah.
We've come to see Darnell Mooney is not a true number one. We knew that deep down coming into it, but he had a great year last year. There's no doubt about it. He played phenomenal last year. But whether or not he sucks or not, Allen Robinson was still there for the majority of the year. They had other weapons better than Dante Pettis, Equiminius St. Brown. I'm excited to see N'Keal Harry come back, being activated.
I am too.
Because I genuinely think he could come in and make a splash. He's a first-round talent, whether people want to admit it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what to expect for tomorrow night or tonight, if you're listening to this today. I mean, Thursday night is going to be sloppy, and it's going to just be an ugly football game. If I'm being honest, I just feel bad that the rest of the country is subjected to watching this on national TV. And because we know how it went the last time the Bears played on national television this year. Granted, they were in Lambeau at Green Bay, but tomorrow it's going to be chilly at game time. A little chilly. It's going to be in the 40s, no rain, but people are going to be saying bear weather with the wind coming off the lake. And it's just, I could very well see the Bears winning by 2 touchdowns tomorrow, but I could also see them losing by 2 touchdowns. I really don't see this being a close game either way, and I think it's going to be ugly. I genuinely think it's going to be ugly.
So I'm actually not of the opinion it's going to be ugly, because if we're going to weight on the scale of ugly, are we going Broncos Colts ugly, or like what's the standard? Because
that's fair. No, that's fair. That's I mean, that is the new measuring stick for an ugly game, and I think it'll be more entertaining than that. I think it will be a less entertaining version of that Giants game.
Yeah, that's oof. I don't want to talk about that, but
Yeah.
but I will say this. I'm trying not to get myself hyped up just because Justin Fields had a good week, because it could easily be one of those things where, oh, he had a good week, or, he's going to build off of this. He has the confidence now. It could very well go from that to him not playing that good. The Bears, it's themselves not playing that good. But one thing that I will say is, a fumble away, and they know they can win and finish football games. They just can't turn the football over. So I truly believe that this game won't be ugly. I don't think either team's going to get blown out because neither team is good enough to blow either team out. Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fair. That's fair.
So what I think we'll have somewhat of a low scoring game, but I'm not gonna make a prediction for obvious reasons. But one thing that I want to see out of this game is Justin Fields doing what he did against Minnesota. And one thing that stood out was that he took the easy throws and he actually made them. That was key because it set up the bigger plays that came after the fact. So take the underneath routes, take what you can, take what the defense is giving you. And by the way, Washington is in the bottom 5 in terms of pass defense. Take advantage of it. If you have to make quick throws, then do that. Just do what you can to move the field, and then if you have to set up the run game to wear them down, which I'm pretty sure the Bears will have good success running the ball on Washington. But if you have to do that to set up the pass game, which is really, really not the strength of the Washington defense, you do that because that will be the key to winning this game.
No, you hit the nail right on the head there. And I saw, I don't know. This was me scrolling on my phone on the train today, coming home from work. I don't know. I may have missed something, but I saw something along the lines of Taylor Heineke being rumored to be in at quarterback tomorrow. I'm not sure if you could fill me in on that, but if that's the case, I'm a lot more scared of that Washington team if Taylor Heineke's in at quarterback than Wentz, if I'm being honest.
Well, I heard from Ron Rivera saying that Wentz should be good to go. Maybe that's barring a drastic change in his health. But I think either way, because if there's one thing about Taylor Heineke is that he's less conservative than Wentz. He's going to hand the ball out, which could be a good thing or could be a bad thing. Now, let's keep in mind, Jalen Johnson is going to be back for that team. That's a very, very, very big deal. And by the way, I can't believe I'm even saying this. Just for all of the stuff that I've said about this man last year, but you may have a legitimate number 2 corner in Kendall Vildor with the way he's been playing this year.
I know.
I can't believe I'm saying this, and it had me thinking too. What if Jalen Jones is actually this year's Kendall Vildor, and he's actually going to progress to that point where he can be a legitimate starting quarterback? And not for nothing, I know people ragged on him, but Kyler Gordon has put up 2 good weeks of football ever since his slow start. If you're telling me that that's the nucleus that you're going to have that quarterback going forward, I'm cool with that. But it is going to be a big test because I know Jahan Dotson's not playing, but you still have Diami Brown that scored 2 touchdowns last week. And of course, you have Terry McLaurin you have to worry about as well.
And Curtis Samuel as well.
Curtis Samuel as well. So that quarterback position is going to be tested. But one thing that makes me feel good if Taylor Heineke is going to start is the fact that the Bears can create turnovers. And we know that. And granted, they haven't been that good all around the board on defense, but they can create turnovers. So that makes me feel a little bit better if Heineke is playing. But then again, Wentz can turn the football over too. So the Bears just got to be hunting for that.
Yeah, and you kind of bring up the Bears and their ability to take the football away. I mean, that is largely in part to the Eddie Jackson of old being back.
Yes.
It looks like he has returned to form. Correct me if I'm wrong. He has 3 interceptions this year.
I think it's 3.
It's either 3 or 4.
It's either 3 or 4, definitely.
Regardless, the Eddie Jackson of old looks like he's back. I don't know what you want to attribute that to. I don't know if it's the players that are surrounding him in that secondary now, where he feels like he can be that ball hawk again. I mean, he still can't tackle. Let's not.
He's been better.
It has been better. He is still just throwing shoulders, but he's at least diving at legs now. More, I don't know. It's looked better, but it's still not good. But if Eddie Jackson and Roquan Smith are your cornerstones on your defense, you're in a good place moving forward.
Yeah.
That's not including Jalen Johnson either. That is a very good young nucleus on the defensive side of the football. I don't know what they're going to do with Roquan. I still don't think he leaves. But I just wanted to talk Eddie Jackson, what do you think the turnaround has been? Honestly, because I know he put out the statement in an interview that his mental health the last few years has not been great due to some horrible circumstances off the field. But do you think that has really been the reason, or do you what do you kind of think?
I think it's a combination of that and just a coaching staff that really didn't prioritize him that much.
Yeah.
And I think when you have a star player on a team, you kind of get a little bit relaxed with them, saying like, you know what, they had an all-pro season. They made it to the Pro Bowl. They was in defensive player of the year conversations, and they said, okay, you can do whatever the heck you want. But maybe that's not exactly what Eddie Jackson really needed. He needed to be coached up still. Regardless of the good years that he has. I think that him not being that much prioritized by the last regime was really damaging to him, combined with the mental health stuff that he went through. Matt Eberflus, he knows the talent that he has in Eddie Jackson. So I feel like he made him an absolute priority to put him in the right positions, and it has worked wonders for him this year. And I'm telling you, well, along with that, that's going to be the same thing with Jaquan Brisker. And you will want that. You will absolutely want that. And you just hope that energy radiates to the cornerback position as a whole. But you could see that Eddie Jackson's, resurgence has made big dividends on the cornerback position in general. Now, that is from a skill-based standpoint, not from a defensive scheme standpoint, because it seems as though that Eberflus and Williams really do not have the faith in the cornerbacks to run a lot of man. They don't do that a lot. And I think they should, because you need to give defenses different looks when you know that a lot of times you're going to be running zone. You're going to be running zone a lot because the quarterbacks you have are just not that skilled to run man, but you have to mix it up a little bit. And I do think because of that, because of Eddie Jackson's resurgence, that they could afford to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, now kind of just pivoting back to the other side of the football. We briefly glossed over just the lack of offensive weapons. I don't necessarily think that the Bears are going to go out and make a splash for someone at the deadline this year. I mean, in-season trades in the NFL are just weird to me anyways. I don't feel like they ever happen, two, they ever pan out how you expect them to. But with the firing of Matt Rule, I know we had mentioned DJ Moore before about coming into Chicago. I mean, how old is he? 25 or 26? I think he's due $25 million next year, which isn't great. But it's always been, man, if DJ Moore just gets a quarterback to throw him the football, I mean, going from, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, a broken down Cam Newton. I mean, just the list goes on and on and on with him. Do I think Justin Fields would potentially feature him like he deserves to be? I don't know. Do I expect the Bears to make that trade? No, but if I'm not on the trade simulator trying to see what it'll take to get DJ Moore, you're lying to yourself.
So I made this point on Twitter. If you look at the free agent class of wide receivers next year, that should be motivation enough for you to say we should probably go out and get our number one for the future. And here's the thing. I honestly don't believe that DJ Moore is going to coach your first round pick. If you combine enough picks, you could probably avoid giving up a first round pick for him. So let's look at that. I understand that the Bears have a lot of holes they have to fill. They could be bad enough to where they get Will Anderson, or they could be bad enough to where they may not be in on Will Anderson, but they can get Jackson Smith and Jigba or Jordan Addison. The point of the matter is, what we saw Ryan Poles do last year was maneuver his way to getting so many picks that you just wonder how little picks they even had going into the draft. So if you want to set the tone and get your number one guy, I think DJ Moore's got to be that guy. Now, I know we discussed Robbie Anderson before, and I was listening to a radio show that I listen to every day, and I heard Dan Orlovsky made a point. College wide receivers nowadays are so ready for the NFL that if you have to mortgage just a little bit of your future on a guy who's training towards 30 years old, it just doesn't make sense, because he's really not going to move the needle, especially when he's at an aging state. And considering that we're not contending, Robbie Anderson wouldn't make that much of a difference. Now, if you're looking towards the future, DJ Moore can absolutely make that difference.
Oh, for sure.
And if you pair him with Darnell Mooney, or if you go wide receiver in the draft, that's a lot you can really deal with, and it opens up a lot more of what you can do in free agency in the draft. And it gives Justin Fields a number one guy that he can actually trust. And, I made some big proclamations about Darnell Mooney being a number one. It hasn't panned out that way. It is what it is. But if he could get that number one guy, I guarantee you he'll be more confident making some of those passes.
And Darnell Mooney is going to be a hell of a lot productive if he's not being zoned in.
1,000%.
And I think that's almost the way you have to look at it, because Darnell Mooney is a great complementary piece on the outside or in the slot, wherever you want to put him. He's a good piece wherever you're going to put him on the field. But you just need someone to draw the attention away from him. And DJ Moore just makes so much sense, because I think the Panthers are going to enter full-blown tank mode. I'm like levels we've never seen before, levels of tank, because that's just what you get for signing the college coach Matt Rule to a fucking 7-year contract.
It never made sense. It never, ever made sense.
College coaches in the NFL just never make sense to me, if we're being honest. I just very rarely does that jump work out well. I think there's, off the top of my head, maybe 2 coaches at the college level right now who I think could come into the NFL and be successful. One, Luke Fickell from Cincinnati. I just think X's and O's wise, I think that he's almost as good as it gets. And 2, why is his name? Well, probably Harbaugh. So I guess it's 3. Harbaugh coming back from Michigan, I think could still be successful. And the 3rd, Ryan Day. Just that offense, man. I think he would be, if he was brought in as a coordinator first to the NFL, was a successful coordinator for a few years, I think he could end up being a good NFL head coach. And that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
But I know, because Ohio State players in the NFL, their quarterbacks never end up well. And hope, fingers crossed for Justin Fields, obviously. But it's just that college demeanor, I guess, just doesn't translate well to the pros. There's a reason Saban didn't work out in the NFL.
Right. And here's why I push back on Ryan Day. It's literally the Justin Fields point I made last week. If you don't have the horses, you are not going to translate that same type of success. Because if you really look at it, Urban Meyer went to the NFL. And we saw the debacle that was.
Yeah.
And was it maybe for a lack of talent? Absolutely. But that college demeanor, like you said, it doesn't work out. But it also means for a lot of Ohio State quarterbacks that it doesn't transfer, especially if you don't have the talent, that you're just not going to be successful. But there's one name that I've always thought that he should get more looks at the NFL. And I think a direct result is the quarterbacks he has developed in his time. David Shaw, to me.
I knew you were going to say it.
David Shaw, to me, considering he's not, because the recruiting that he has to go up against.
For Stanford, it's difficult. No, I agree.
It's so tough. But for what he's doing with, he did it with Andrew Luck. He did it with what's his name? Davis Mills. Tanner McKee might go in the first round this year. If you told me who was Tanner McKee before going into last season, I wouldn't even know who that was.
Neither.
So that's great work by him. And if he decides to leave Stanford for a bigger job, I mean, what's the holdup? There shouldn't be anything. I understand the records are not, where they should be for a guy of that caliber of head coach, but I feel like if anyone could transition and make a quarterback good.
No, that's fair. No, that is.
I think it's gonna be.
He's always been. The 2 names that always get thrown around from the college level, like in that same vein, are Pat Fitzgerald from Northwestern, which I will never understand.
I will never understand.
And he grew up not far from me. He supports the area, big Bears fan as well. I've never understood that. Northwestern has had a few good years under him, but he's a lifer there. He's never going to leave Northwestern, and good for him. They don't care.
they don't do anything special around him. It's not
Nope.
like they have a top defense every year. It's not like
Nope.
they do anything special on offense. They do nothing special. So what? So is it leadership? I understand. The only thing that I could vouch for in terms of him is he can bring a Mike Vrabel type approach. And by the way,
For sure.
Mike Vrabel was one of the best coaches in football, and not many people talk about it. So maybe that's the appeal. But in terms of what he can do in terms of the Big Ten West, which, by the way, the Big Ten West has been good in a very long time.
Hey, Illinois is going to the Rose Bowl.
You got to get through us first.
They're not going to the Rose Bowl, but
they do look pretty good, though.
But also, I looked it up just to see, because I would have not expected the record to be this good. David Shaw in his head coaching career at Stanford is 94-49. It's just
like what?
It's been a rough couple of years. There's no doubt about it, but I would have thought that record was a hell of a lot closer to 500.
Yeah,
and he's 5-3 in bowls. So that's 8 bowl games. And when did he take over as head coach? He took over as head coach in 2011. I think Stanford fans are pretty happy with going to 8 bowl games in 10 years.
Oh, of course. Pac-12 is not the toughest conference, but when you get to the top dogs, it's just like, yeah, well, we're not quite there, but we're in the middle of the road at least. So,
yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, but that just kind of bouncing into rest of the league. Just another interesting week of football. I mean, concussions just seem to be like coming out of thin air at this point with the NFL, and especially the Dolphins. Like, honestly, Teddy Bridgewater, hope he's okay. Tua supposedly is going to start practicing again this week. But we saw just some really boring games this week for the most part, if we're being honest. I mean, New England going up 29-0 over Detroit with Bailey Zappi and a quarterback. I mean, he looks good. Did you see what Belichick said about Zappi today?
Yeah. You know what? When you are the FBS leader in passing, you can demand conversations like that. So I get it.
Hey, but Belichick, they were asked, what are the similarities between Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones' game? Belichick paused, waited for a second, said, I guess they both throw right-handed. And left it at that.
He's such a dickhead.
But other than that, I mean, Houston, 13-6 over Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence looked absolutely atrocious. And, I mean, AFC South, shocker, still up for grabs. It's not looking good in the slightest. The Rams. I want to touch on the Rams. After this week, the Los Angeles Rams have the 32nd ranked offense in the NFL. If you would have told me that even before, if I would not have seen that stat today and someone told me that, I wouldn't have believed it. I wouldn't have believed it just off the fact alone. Cooper Kupp has as many receptions as Justin Fields has completions so far.
Yeah. Matt Stafford's had a great career. He won a Super Bowl. I think he's done everything he wanted to do.
Yeah.
He can't save this team. He's not good enough to save this team. And especially I feel like with Los Angeles teams, salary cap really doesn't matter.
No.
Like it doesn't exist for them. But could they at least put some money into that offensive line? That offensive line is dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. Yeah. And how can you expect Stafford, who, by the way, came into the season with a bad throwing elbow, how do you expect him to make magic out of this stuff? They don't have a run game. You're only throwing a Cooper Kupp, and at that point, you're playing buddy ball, and you sign Allen Robinson to be a number 2, and he's been a number 5 at this point.
You want to know what's a crazy stat that I saw as well today? Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson. Guess the difference between their red zone targets.
It's definitely the double digits.
They're the exact same.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. And how many touchdowns does Allen Robinson have this year? 1?
One, I believe.
Okay, and that was in week 2. I remember that.
Yeah.
So definitely, that's.
I mean,
you would think, right? The big body receiver would get a lot of the targets, and
Mhm.
maybe that'll materialize into some touchdowns. There was a reason why I was not sad about losing Allen Robinson. When they said there could be a chance they will sign back, I said, no, let him walk. Let him walk.
We were both in that same boat, man. And it just seems like I don't want to call him a diva because he's not. Other than the contract situation, he always like
And the Twitter stuff too.
yeah. But he hasn't been a diva thus far in LA. Seemingly, he wasn't when he was in Jacksonville. It just seemed like he didn't get along with the old regime with the Bears, which whatever that type of shit happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think he's good. I like flat out. I don't think he is what he was before.
I don't think he's interested in playing football anymore. I know that's a wild accusation to make, but I just don't feel like he's interested in playing football anymore.
That's the way it looks, at least. And I also want to touch on just the primetime games in general across the NFL this year, because I feel like the Monday night games have been pretty solid. There was a good one this Monday between the Chiefs and the Raiders. I mean, Raiders just, I don't know what the fuck is going on in Vegas right now with McDaniel, but I mean, they just, they were up, what was it, 20-10 at half, I believe?
21-10.
Yeah.
What, 20 or 21?
It's 20, it was one of the two.
Yeah.
But then they ended up losing 30-29 because Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes.
And Travis Kelce's a bad man too.
Can we talk about that? I mean, 25 yards, 7 catches, 4 touchdowns. You are not going to see a stat line like that, like
never
again. I still think Rob Gronkowski all time is the better overall tight end. I just, in terms of what a healthy Rob Gronkowski was able to do at the line of scrimmage blocking wise, what he was able to do in the open field. But holy shit, if Travis Kelce isn't just, he's a joy to watch. He really, he makes it look easy. Every single thing he does. I mean, you're in the red zone. Everyone knows that football is going in Travis Kelce's direction, and no one can stop it.
Yep.
Absolutely no one can stop it. And that offense really, I mean, yeah, you can tell Mahomes misses Tyreek Hill at times, but I'm at the point now where I am back on the Chiefs walking out of the AFC over the Bills.
Oh, we're going to see this weekend. We're going to see this weekend. That game's going to be amazing. I can't wait. There's one team that we need to talk about, though. And this is a team that I was very, very reluctant to pick for the Super Bowl for one very, very, very glaring reason. And we saw it on display as they lost a game they probably should have won on Sunday. Check that, Sunday morning. Now, I'm not saying the Giants are a bad football team. I'm not saying they're a great football team. They are very, very average, if you ask me. And granted, a lot of that has to do with they have a lot of injuries at the wide receiver position, so you really don't know what Daniel Jones can do. They have an improved offensive line, and Wake Martindale has done wonders with that defense. But maybe, just maybe, the Packers are just not that good. Let's take a look at it.
Yeah.
With Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay did not have Mike Evans, and Tom Brady suffered because of it. Matter of fact, you listen, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Julio Jones. There wasn't much for Tom Brady at 45 years old to do to score in that game. It just wasn't going to happen. You go to, and then New England. I mean, the third stringer.
The fact that game was even close.
It's like not for nothing. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Bailey Zappi, third string, going into Lambeau. You would think he would crap his pants. He didn't. They were so close to being Green Bay that week. So close. And with the Giants, it's just like the offense just ran out of gas. And I kept saying this. That Green Bay defense is not as good as people think. That Green Bay defense can be had. And we know about that. But let's talk about the offense, though. The offense lacks an identity, and that is a part of a big issue. You want to know why? Their identity should be that two-man power trip in the backfield. Honestly, I know Rodgers could throw the ball all around the yard if he wanted
But
to.
who's he throwing it to? That's
He could, but he doesn't have that option at this moment in time. He simply doesn't have it. He doesn't have a security blanket anymore. No one on that team so far has developed themselves to be a security blanket, and the guy you could probably say is the closest is a older Randall Cobb. That's not ideal.
I mean, yeah,
So
I believe, I could be wrong. He had almost 15 targets on Sunday morning in London. And the fact that what is he, 35 or 36, whatever, mid to late 30s, Randall Cobb is garnering close to 15 targets in any situation is just flat out bad. I mean, you saw what their offense was doing earlier in the year when they were featuring AJ Dillon consistently. I saw his snap share each week has gone down. At beginning of the for week one, it was up in the 60s. This past week, it was the low 30s, high 20s. I forgot what it was.
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It makes no sense. And I think Aaron Rodgers is smart enough. Yes, he has an ego, but I think he's smart enough to know what winning football looks like. And that includes the duo of Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. But it's ugly. I mean, that is one of my takeaways from this game. I'll get into my second takeaway after your next point.
I'm glad you mentioned Aaron Rodgers' ego. So with quarterbacks are some of the biggest divas that are out there, and not many people are going to talk about that because wide receivers are the divas and they demand the football. Who is to say that Aaron Rodgers, after losing Devontae Adams, feel like he has something to prove?
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's because to me, I have watched a lot of Aaron Rodgers football games. I'm a Bears fan. I've seen it, I've lived through it, and I've cried through it. Now, one thing he is amazing at is setting up play action. He is awesome in play action. Wouldn't it make more sense to go to your two very talented running backs to set up that play action so you can set up some more deep pass plays? I mean, listen, I understand the wide receivers are not that good to have them be a full threat. But you are Aaron Rodgers. You make guys better. This has been your hallmark throughout your entire career.
Mhm.
When is that going to happen? Granted, I know it's a two-way street, but there has to be some type of compromise between him and Matt LaFleur that there's got to be a healthy balance of running and throwing the football, because with the talent that I'm throwing to, it don't make sense for us to have an unbalanced offensive attack. Devontae Adams is not coming back to the Packers this year or next year or the year after. So you have to capitulate to what you have on the field. And I think because of this, I know Aaron Rodgers against he's going to play the Jets after losing. He's great after he loses. He's absolutely amazing. But I'm still putting him on upset alert this week. These not the same Jets, man. This Jets team is good, and they're motivated too.
And that young core they have on the offensive side of the football, it's going to do a lot of damage for a lot of years. Zach Wilson doesn't even have to be that good,
That's the scary part.
considering the talent that they've put around him. I'll be completely honest. Out of all the young quarterbacks in the NFL, I can't believe I'm even all right. Other than Tua, I will say, other than Tua, I think Zach Wilson's in the best situation to succeed moving
Oh,
forward.
1,000%.
Which you would have,
1,000%.
if you would have told me that when the Jets drafted him, that I would be saying this right now, I would have asked what I was smoking because,
Yeah.
I mean, just the young core they have, and all these guys seem like they are ready to win just based on the quotes you see in the media. I mean, Brees Hall, he just has a fucking chip on his shoulder.
Oh, he's good, man. He's good.
What do you have? 200 all-purpose yards this past week against the
Yeah.
Dolphins. He is special. I mean, you knew that watching him at Iowa State. I mean, if you had like half a brain, you would understand he'd be good in the NFL. Him and Michael Carter's a really good running back duo.
Yeah, man.
You just factor in all of their receivers: Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore. I mean, just young everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And They're a good team, man. But the other point I wanted to make is in regards to the other team that plays at MetLife. Do you think the Bears regret hiring Eberflus yet, seeing what Brian Daboll's been able to do through 5 weeks?
100% yes. 100%. And thing about it is, if you really want to weight on the scale of talent wise, where the Bears and Giants were, you say they're somewhat equal. Maybe the Giants had a bit more advantage because they did sign
Slight
a lot of
advantage
good
if they
guys.
won.
They signed a lot of good guys. They just didn't know what to do with them. Now, especially with the Giants, they had two picks in the top 10. I mean, that's incredible. Even with Dave Gettleman being the horrible GM that he was, he still, stuff still happened. But I'm not saying Matt Eberflus is not creating a better culture with the Bears, but Brian Daboll, just for the fact that this Giants team with Daniel Jones as a starting quarterback is at 4-1 and have a very legitimate shot to beat the Baltimore Ravens this Sunday, you have to look at it and you're just like, man, what went wrong?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, too, Daboll sparked up a relationship with Justin Fields back when Justin Fields was in college.
Yeah.
So you would have thought that made a lot more sense, but I guess they went with a guy that's going to build an all-around culture, be like the overseer of things, and just have the guys coach, the coordinators coach whichever side of the ball. I get it. And Luke Getsy he loved Justin Fields coming out of college. So I mean that means something. I get it. But man, seeing where the Giants are, you're just like, man, that could have been us. That could have been us. And granted, this is a team in Chicago that could end Thursday night being 3-3. Then anyone expect that? No, not at all. Not at all. And that's a pretty good accomplishment if you ask me. But I think you would obviously trade a 4-1 start for a 2-3 start. And credit to them, credit to Daboll, because man, he's had to scrap up a lot of wins with guys that would struggle to make a roster, especially on the offensive end.
Mm-hmm. He's gonna win Coach of the Year, I think.
It would be a runaway if he can stay the course.
I honestly don't even think he has to stay the course. He wins 8 or 9 games. I mean, I know that's saying a lot looking at that team, especially with how the NFC East is looking. I mean, that division is looking a heck of a lot better than any of us would have expected after week 1.
Oh, by the way, his competition for Coach of the Year is definitely in his division.
Mm-hmm.
Sirianni's doing a great job with that team.
Absolutely. Although I think it would go to Daboll. I mean, if it happened right now, I think it's going to Daboll, no doubt, just based on the talent that's surrounding him. But you can see there's a culture there.
Yeah.
They have an identity. They're going to run the football. Very different from what they did in Buffalo. And that might be because of circumstances due to all the injuries they have at receiver.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's hard to not be successful on the offensive side of the football when you have Saquon Barkley looking like it is 2018 again.
Oh, yeah, he looks amazing. He looks amazing.
Yeah, and another thing I want to talk about real quick before we move on from football is mentioned it earlier, just the lack of good primetime games in the NFL. I had a little bit of an idea. I don't know how the hell this would work, but just for Monday Night Football, right? For Monday Night Football moving forward, the winner stays on Monday Night Football, King of the Hill style, until they lose, and make it a competition. I mean, that would be a shit show, TV contract wise, scheduling wise. I don't know how it would work, but there just needs to be some type of added incentive because the primetime games have not been good this year. It could be Sunday night too. Sunday night probably makes it a lot easier, if we're being honest. But,
well, probably Monday would be easier, definitely, or even Thursday for that matter.
But then again, who wants to play on Thursdays? I don't think anyone wants to play on Thursdays.
That's true.
That's also, I would also propose just eliminating Thursday night football and having a doubleheader on Mondays every night.
I agree.
Thursday night football is an absolute shit show. We saw quite possibly the worst football game of all time on last Thursday night with the Colts and the Broncos.
Legitimately, that was the worst game I've seen. I think it was 2007. It was a Monday Night Football game with the Dolphins and Steelers, and it rivals that. And it's on YouTube. They have a condensed version of it. If you've never watched it, go back, and you'll probably hate me for suggesting that to you. That's how bad of a football game it was. But what I would propose for Monday night, and it would bring it so much more juice. And I think that we've seen a lot more of it. I think the trend's going to get broken next week with the Bears and Patriots. Divisional games on Monday nights.
Yep.
Only divisional games, because it's the only way you're going to get so many eyes on that game. Because I'm telling you now, you see Chargers and Broncos on there. You're just like, Russell Wilson playing, but Justin Herbert is playing, though. Then next week, you're going to possibly see Bailey Zappi against Justin Fields. Nobody's going to want to watch that. Nobody. I'm sorry. Listen,
no one wants to watch Justin Fields and Carson Wentz on Thursday night either.
Which is fine. That's fine, because I know good down in my heart it's going to be a better game than Denver and Indianapolis. And I ain't saying much, but I guarantee it's going to be better. I guarantee it. But that's why I propose. The primetime games have been very hit or miss. And I feel like it's going to pick up steam as the season goes on.
I mean, it always does. But it's like genuinely hard to watch, man. And as someone who just loves nothing more than sitting down on the couch watching football, it's just been rough, man.
But I will say, the Cowboys and Eagles are going to save us this Sunday night. You can bank on that.
Dak isn't back yet, correct? He is
not.
Okay, because I saw that he began practicing again. I just didn't know if he was playing or not. But you see, I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles blew him out. Honestly, although
really,
that Cowboys defense it's fucking good.
It's phenomenal.
It is
phenomenal.
Really,
defense.
really, really good. So I don't know, but you are right. That probably will. It'll be a good game. It will. Better than what we've been accustomed to this year, at least.
Yeah.
But moving on from football, Brandon, the floor is yours to discuss the end for the St. Louis Cardinals as we know them.
So, truth be told, I've been very, very sad over this. It was set to happen on Saturday. And obviously, it weighs heavy because this is the last game of Yadier Molina, last game of Albert Pujols. Maybe the last game for Adam Wainwright. He didn't play, but it could be the end for him too. I think a lot of people expected the Cardinals to win the NL Central this year. I know there's those naysayers like Pacoda that gets the predictions wrong for the Cardinals every year, and people thought the Brewers were going to win the division. If you would look at just the regular season, I would say this Cardinals season has been an absolute success, 1,000%, and everything that they've done. I think they smashed expectations for them.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to say it's not going to be popular. That postseason ruined the entire regular season completely. And here's the thing. I know it's kind of irrational to say that 2 games ruin an entire regular season, but when you put up 2 runs in 7 innings, 9 innings, because now prior to the 9th inning, you put up 2 runs, couldn't score against Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler's amazing, I get it, but you allow a 6-run inning in the 9th inning, and there was all types of blades being put around Ali Marmol, rookie manager. You got to know the situation. Ryan Helsley had an issue with his fingers going into this game. He probably shouldn't have even came into the game at all.
Correct.
He had blisters on his finger. He had no control of his fastball, and then allowed him to load the bases when he clearly did not have it, and playing no doubles defense when you could have absolutely turned a double play had you played in a doubles defense in the infield. And the Saturday night game was just so unacceptable. The stars didn't show up. Arenado didn't show up. Goldschmidt, who's probably going to win MVP, he didn't show up. Every guy outside of those guys showed up.
Yeah.
And all for no runs. And I want to deliver a stat. The past 24 postseason games for the St. Louis Cardinals, they are 6-18. And
Hey man,
15 out of those 15 losses, they've been scoreless in 8 of them.
oh, that's bad.
8 games.
That's bad. All I'll say is it could be worse. You could be a Minnesota Twins fan who are 0-19 in their last 19 playoff games.
That's fair. But let me ask you a question. When was the last time the Minnesota Twins won a World Series?
Exactly. I mean, hey, no, exactly. I would rather be a Cardinal fan in this situation. And I mean, I wish I was able to cheer for an organization who is as competent and as consistently good as the Cardinals. It genuinely makes me jealous because they are just one of those model franchises who they just win. Flat out, they win. And I know that if I was in your shoes, I would be very upset. I know I was very upset last year when the Sox got just whomped in the divisional round against the Astros. Even more angry when they didn't make the playoffs this year, when this was the year they were the third. They had the third best odds to win the World Series beginning of the year. I just Cardinals are going to be back next year. They need another arm. I don't know who they're going to go out and get, but they for sure need another arm. And it's going to be interesting seeing them enter the new. It's a new era of Cardinal baseball. It really is. No more Yachty. I know it's crazy to say because Pujols has only been back for a year, but it's like no Pujols, no Yachty, potentially no Wainwright. Although after seeing what Adam Wainwright tweeted today, that big long thread, I think he'll be. I think he'll be back next year.
I think so too. I think so too.
And he'll probably pitch at a high level again because that's just what Wainwright does.
Yeah.
So I know the season did not end how you wanted it to, but what if you were able to make one move for your Cardinals this offseason, what would it be?
I'm not sure what the starting pitching market looks like, but I think getting a frontline arm is definitely at number 1 for me. Actually, no, it's number 2. You know what move I will want to make more than anything? A new hitting coach.
Okay.
So I want to lay something out to people. Mike Shute won Manager of the Year last year. And you know what happened to him afterwards? He got fired. He got fired because of philosophical differences. And those philosophical differences had a lot to do with, hey, I don't want this guy being our hitting coach. And what did John Mozeliak do? He said, I'm going to stick with Jeff Albert. You're out the door after winning Manager of the Year. That is, at what point is the struggles of the offense going to fall on the guy who's teaching them how to hit? At what point? You're not holding him accountable. You're coddling him. And every single time, I understand baseball's full of droughts. It happens. It is what it is. But when it gets to a point where every October it's the same thing over and over again, where we're trying so hard to score runs, you have to look at the guy who's teaching them how to hit situationally. It cannot continue. And I'm telling you, I know for a fact he would not be fired. And that's the worst part about it. I know he won't be fired. He must got pictures of somebody in the Cardinals organization. I don't get it. But that's unfortunate situation. My first move would be to get a new hitting coach. But everything else, I would say top line starting pitcher. And I know I'm going far beyond the list, but number 3, fill that DH spot. And I think I have the perfect guy. I mean, Rowdy Tellez hit 30 home runs, over 30 home runs this year. I think he'd be a perfect DH guy. But I'm talking from a guy that's playing fantasy booking because I know the Cardinals are not going to do anything except for signing Wilson Contreras, and that's it.
Oof. Man, oh man, if they signed Wilson Contreras, just the
Which
melt.
I'll be happy with, by the way.
Oh,
I'll be happy.
I think it would be great too. I mean, the meltdown that Cub fans would have would just
Oh, it'll be amazing.
it would be otherworldly. I mean, if I were you as a Cardinal fan, the number one thing I would want though would be to hope and pray Carlos Rodon opts out of his contract
Oh,
and just
yes.
signs himself a big old deal with the Cardinals because I still can't believe the Sox just didn't give him a qualifying offer. And I know Rodon's had his struggles, but he was as good as it got this year. I mean, he had 11 plus WAR, lefty who's consistently bumping high 90s with his fastball. I mean, it's just and a wipeout slider. He is so goddamn good when he's healthy, and he's going to get himself paid. I don't know who it's going to be by because he is 100% opting out from that contract after this year.
Oh, well, definitely.
And it's so funny though that you mentioned Mike Schilt being fired because he's been a name that's kind of been rumored to come in and potentially manage the White Sox next year. And that's someone who I don't want personally, just because the Sox have never had an analytically minded manager in my lifetime that I can remember. Yes, Tony relied on analytics a little bit where he decided it was a better situation to, intentionally walk Trey Turner 1 and 2 count and then did it again later in Cleveland. But that's whatever, just intentionally walking anyone on a 1-2 count. I mean, anyone could look at the analytics on that and say you're a fucking idiot, but whatever. I personally for the Sox do not want to see Schilt because I know that he is just an all-time gut guy. But then again, if it came down to him or Ozzie Guillen, like they're saying, I don't know. I genuinely don't know, man. And I'm not very locked in on the playoffs right now, personally, after the wild card round. I mean, I'll for sure watch the LCS in the World Series, but I haven't been able to get locked in, and I just think we're on a crash course for Astros and Dodgers again. So, and I mean, it's not a bad thing. It'll be entertaining, but it's just they're the two best teams in baseball, and I don't think there's any debate in that.
I'll say this. So I was heavy on the Mets train this year. I thought they were as equivalent to the Dodgers as any team in the National League. But I actually think they lost the lead in the division on the second to last week of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's gotten to a point where we are bored of talking about the Atlanta Braves because they won the World Championship, and we think that repeating is just not it's just not in the realm of possibility. But it is.
No, it is. It is.
And this Braves team is so good. And by the way, they got better this year. They're a better baseball team this year.
Man. 101 games.
I'm telling you, the Phillies going to be a hard out. Like, I don't think they impressed me in that wild card round. It was more about the Cardinals being stank, other than the Phillies being good. But Atlanta's good. If they pull out that series, I guess the Dodgers are going to beat the Padres. I think we both agree on that.
Yeah.
But is it a foregone conclusion that the Dodgers will make the World Series? I don't think so. And I'll tell you this. I know the Astros are a better team than the Yankees. But am I going to definitively say that the Astros are better to where the Yankees are better than the Yankees to the point where I think they get them out 4, 5, 6 games? No. I think that series is going to be a dogfight, and it's going to be, for the Yankee side, rooted in pure adulterated hatred. And I think that's what's going to fuel them in the series. So that being said, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that's going to be Dodgers and Astros. There's going to be some juice from the other side. So I think that's something we definitely got to keep an eye on.
Well, I'm going to stop you right there. I think that Cleveland's going to end up facing Houston in the next round, if we're being completely honest.
Really?
And I hope they hit, man. No, they can't. But their pitching is just so goddamn good, man. And I personally, I mean, this is such a dumb reason, I want to see them win the World Series. it would just be such a slap in the face to the White Sox if Cleveland came in, team that was projected to finish third in the division this year, and won the World Series in the year that the Sox were the not Super Bowl, World Series favorite. It would be like the icing on the cake for me from being a bitter White Sox fan. I'm bitter about all my sports teams. Don't get me wrong. But if anyone listens to this show, they know which team I'm the most bitter about. And it all comes back to Jerry fucking Reinsdorf. So hey, baseball season's over, but at least I had Chicago Bulls to watch around, right? They're definitely
that's a good point. They're going to be good this year.
I know. I don't think they are.
Wow.
I think they'll be a 6 or a 7 seed if we're being completely honest. It's just
hey, the East is pretty loaded. So if you get in as a 6 or 7 seed, that's
fair.
With that.
Fair. But I mean, I just think we're gonna see DeMar DeRozan kind of come back to earth. I know Lonzo Ball at the beginning of the year. I don't know what to expect for him. I hate Vucevic.
Everyone does.
He just pisses me off beyond belief, man. And the fact that it's being rumored Pat Williams might be playing the 5 at some point this year, who was, I still don't like that draft pick, but whatever, man. It's whatever. We're talking baseball, but yeah, a lot more coming around the corner here. Basketball season starting up. I mean, great slate of college football that we're going to have to talk about next week because this Saturday is as good of a slate as I could remember in a long time. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Hendon Hooker is winning himself the Heisman this Saturday.
Not if Blake Corum does it this Saturday too.
That's fair. I mean, it's fair.
By the way, for your Guardians point, 2 things quickly. Number one, if they win the World Series this year, I think I'll be absolutely sick to my stomach because they could have did it in 2016, but they did get the job done. And number 2, it will be the only way people will stop calling them the Cleveland Indians. Literally.
Oh, you're so right about that. I mean, the Sox play them how many times this year? 20, whatever it is. And I still felt myself slipping up all the time calling them just like calling the Commanders the Redskins from time to time in the Washington football team. But hey, it is what it is. But with that being said, we will be back next week, hopefully discussing what is a Bears win tomorrow night. Tonight, you're listening on Thursday against the Commanders. But if you made it this far, we appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the show, and we will talk to you next week.